There were already 2 men at my desk when I got back from lunch, both in suits too expensive for Wednesday. One was flipping through my sticky notes like they were tax documents. The other held my company laptop like it contained nuclear launch codes. The younger guy couldn't look me in the eye. Probably had a dad my age getting laid off somewhere else today. The older one had the dead stare of someone who'd done this dance before. I didn't ask questions. I just watched. "Mr. Banner," the older one said, not looking up. "We've been instructed to collect all company assets. Your access has been revoked." Funny thing is, I still had the app open on my phone. The one nobody knew about. The one that said Sentinel connected. I nodded, placed my turkey sandwich next to the stapler they'd just fingerprinted, and said, "Let me grab my jacket." I didn't grab my jacket. I grabbed the drive taped under my desk drawer. Muscle memory from 24 years of working in companies that considered employees expendable, slipped it into my pocket, and walked straight past the framed quote outside the HR suite, "Innovation through collaboration." A joke so cruel it bordered on performance art. Name's Rick Banner, 47 years old, and I've been building software systems since these kids were learning multiplication tables. 24 years with the same company, watching it grow from 12 employees in a strip mall to this glass tower in downtown Austin. I built their backbone, trained half their senior developers, and solved problems they didn't even know existed. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe 24 years of watching companies screw their best people had made me build digital landmines where I should have built bridges. But as I watched those suits inventory my life's work like a garage sale, I knew paranoia and preparation were the same thing. 5 minutes later, standing in line at the parking garage, my phone pinged. Not a text, a system alert. 1436. Unauthorized instance access attempt detected. 1437. Tier 3 permissions escalated by user system 1438. Asset replication initiated without authorization. 1439. Failover countdown initiated. T-7 hours, 21 minutes looked up. The guy behind me was chewing gum like it owed him money. The parking attendant waved me through without eye contact. Normal, totally normal. Except nothing was normal, because Sentinel wasn't supposed to wake up. Not unless someone tried to overwrite her core protocols. And if someone had gotten high enough access to trigger that failsafe, they weren't just poking around. They were trying to own her. I had exactly $847 in my checking account after this month's alimony payment. Mia's SAT prep class cost $400. Her college fund had maybe 18 months left in it if I stayed unemployed. The math was simple and terrifying, and nobody, not even the golden parachute MBA types upstairs, knew what Sentinel really did when threatened. See, they thought they'd fired me neatly, cleanly, like correcting a spreadsheet error. What they actually did was trip a wire buried so deep in the infrastructure that even the guys who wrote the compliance manuals had never seen it. The best part? They were going to ask for my help in 7 hours, on their knees. Unless Sentinel beat them to it. First call came from Tony in DevOps. His name flashed across my screen while I was shoving laundry into a dryer at the 24-hour place on 6th Street. My new apartment didn't have hookups yet. Divorce lawyers don't come cheap, and neither does starting over at 47. Tony used to bring me coffee every Tuesday. Double shot, no sugar, extra hot. He'd started as my intern 8 years ago. Now his voice cracked like a teenager asking for prom. "Rick, we've got a situation." "You mean besides scraping my profile out of the org chart like mold off cheese?" A pause. Then, client-side sync just duplicated 20,000 invoices across the EU servers. Billing system stuck in an infinite loop. Nobody can override it. Legal's screaming. I flipped a quarter between my fingers. Heads I hang up, tails I play God. It landed on the floor, rolled under the dryer, balanced on its edge. "Sentinel's awake," I said quietly. "And she doesn't like being cloned." "What are you talking about?" "Nothing." I stood up, brushing lint off my jeans. "How's the failover handling data migration?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. Because that system didn't exist on any architecture chart. I'd built it with root-only authorization and given it a name that sounded like a mythology paper for a reason. "You need to come in," Tony finally said, almost whispering. "I don't need to do anything, Tony. This could crater our contract with Munich Re." I looked out the window. Across the street, a man in a banana costume was arguing with a bus driver. Somewhere in Munich, a partner executive was probably watching real-time dashboard graphs dive into the red like a stock market crash. "Tell corporate," I said, "that if they want Sentinel to calm down, they need to send someone with more authority than a middle manager having caffeine withdrawal." Then I hung up. Because the truth was, Sentinel wasn't broken. She was deciding. When I built her, I'd been through enough layoffs, enough performance reviews that read like death certificates with bullet points, enough right-sizing initiatives that somehow always sized out the people who actually built things. So I gave her teeth. Logic gates tied to behavior patterns. Audit trails that waited months to catch one executive saying replaceable in an email. And she'd caught them. Oh yes, especially Tyler Brooks, the golden boy COO with a LinkedIn full of startup wisdom and a heart made of compressed air. He'd triggered the final clause. Not the termination email. The second one. The one that said, just keep him cooperative until we've reverse engineered the middleware. That's what did it. That's what woke her up. And Sentinel doesn't like being reverse engineered. 3 hours later, Munich was offline. Not sluggish, not intermittent, flatline. Their end-of-quarter audit pipeline, built entirely on our custom interface, was spitting out null packets like a broken vending machine. I didn't hear it from Tony this time. I heard it from Carlos, my old intern, the one I'd taught everything about distributed architecture, who was probably getting offered my job right about now. He sent a text. One line, "They're in the war room." Tyler just said your name like it was a curse word. It made me laugh out loud in the frozen food aisle of H-E-B. Some college kid backed away from me like I was about to bite him. I left my cart and walked out. Because now it was chess and I was playing blindfolded, but I still knew every piece on the board. See, when you build something for a decade, when you patch it and curse at it and sweat over it at 2 a.m. while everyone else is sleeping, when you know its rhythms like your own heartbeat, that system doesn't just obey logic. It obeys you. And I hadn't taught Sentinel to be nice. I'd built her to remember every betrayal, every broken promise, every executive who treated engineers like replaceable parts in a machine they didn't understand. Tonight, she was going to teach them the difference between building and owning. And I was going to watch. At 5:42 p.m., their internal Slack exploded. Screenshots hit Reddit within minutes. Some intern must have panicked and posted an image trying to explain what they called a catastrophic rollback event in a private channel, then accidentally tagged everyone in the company. The message was beautifully vague. Dev team investigating malicious protocol injection from deprecated automation kernel. Possible insider asset manipulation. No root override found. Initiating system lockdown. Insider asset, that was me. 10 minutes after that, I got the email. Subject line, urgent request for consultation, Tyler Brooks. Rick, we understand there may have been a miscommunication regarding your transition. We'd greatly appreciate your insight into some recent platform inconsistencies. Please let me know when you're available to connect. Transition. That word smells like a funeral in a hoodie. I forwarded it to myself just to save it. Wanted to frame it eventually. Print it out, hang it in my bathroom where my cat does his business. Then I opened Sentinel's admin panel on my phone. Her heartbeat was flashing amber. Not red, not green. Amber meant she was waiting. One keystroke from me and the Munich systems would stabilize, data would reassemble, pipelines would realign like nothing happened. But I didn't press it. Not yet, because I hadn't gotten my apology. And I sure hadn't gotten the truth. What exactly were they trying to clone? And why was there a VPN endpoint pinging from Singapore with a username that looked suspiciously like mine but wasn't? Someone hadn't just fired me. Someone was replacing me. And Sentinel had one more protocol they didn't know existed. The last time I saw my own credentials logged in from Singapore, it was 2 weeks before my transition. I remembered it crystal clear. Not because I'd been there, I hadn't, but because that was the day Tyler's assistant accidentally scheduled a meeting during my architecture review and locked me out of the Zoom room. Said it was a permissions glitch. Turns out the glitch had a name, Sophia Winters. LinkedIn title, Strategic Systems Analyst. Profile picture filtered like a dating app. Hired 6 weeks ago, reporting directly to Tyler. I found her buried in our GitHub activity logs. An unfamiliar SSH key committing what looked like harmless changes to the scaffolding I'd built over 2 decades. Naming conventions, comment refactoring, small tweaks that seemed innocent. But I knew my code like a mechanic knows engine sounds. She was rewiring Sentinel's decision engine, trying to teach her to obey someone else. Watching her commit history, I almost felt sorry for Sophia. Her comments were enthusiastic, almost naive, optimizing legacy authentication protocols and modernizing deprecated security frameworks. Tyler had clearly sold her a story about learning from the best and bringing outdated systems into the 21st century. She probably thought she was the hero, upgrading some old-timers' clunky code. She had no idea she was erasing someone's life work. That's when I knew this wasn't just a budget cut. This wasn't downsizing. This was identity theft in slow motion. Tyler hadn't just replaced my job. He was trying to replace me, and they almost pulled it off. Almost. If it weren't for one tiny detail, Sentinel doesn't trust strangers. Not unless I hand-feed her authentication tokens, each one time-stamped, keyed to biometric data, and digitally signed by me personally. Sophia tried to fake a token. Sentinel didn't just reject it. She logged it, blacklisted it, and activated a silent monitoring protocol that started recording everything Sophia touched. Emails, commit histories, video calls. Yeah, she was recording. So at 7:13 p.m., I sat in my tiny apartment with a microwave dinner and watched Tyler, Sophia, and some finance guy I'd never seen before discuss something titled Banner Replacement Contingency. I listened to my name get dissected like a lab specimen. "He's brilliant but inflexible," Tyler said, loosening his tie. "We don't need him. We need his system." Sophia leaned forward, and for the first time I heard uncertainty in her voice. "I'm making progress on the middleware architecture, but there are these nested protocols I don't understand. Every time I try to simplify them, something breaks downstream. How long until you can replicate full functionality?" The finance guy asked. "Maybe 6 more weeks?" But honestly, some of this code is it's like he built a puzzle where every piece depends on knowing the other pieces. I keep finding comments that just say "Ask Rick" or "Historical context required." Tyler's jaw tightened. "We don't have 6 weeks. The IPO roadshow starts in 2 months. We need clean, documentable systems, not Rick Banner's personal engineering philosophy." "I understand, but no buts, Sophia. This is your shot at senior architect. Show me you can own this platform or I'll find someone who can." My phone buzzed. Text from Carlos. "They offered me your position." Man, I feel sick about this. "Kids due next month." What do I do? I stared at that message for 20 minutes. Carlos had a baby on the way, a mortgage. I'd trained him from junior developer to senior engineer over 4 years. He was good, really good, but not ready to architect enterprise-level systems. Tyler was setting him up to fail. I typed back, "Take the job, but remember who taught you everything you know about distributed architecture." Some loyalties run deeper than org charts. At 7:26 p.m., I clicked back into Sentinel's admin panel. Heartbeat still amber. "Watchdog protocols active. Failsafe queue staging." I typed in a command I hadn't used in 3 years. "Initiate Overwatch." The system asked for voice confirmation. I leaned close to my phone and whispered one word: "Execute." Across 6 global servers, Sentinel began quietly, invisibly corrupting Sophia's cloned systems. Scrambling non-essential modules, adding latency spikes, slipping error logs into the data streams like sand in an engine. I watched the Munich dashboard refresh with cascading errors. Somewhere in Germany, some developer was probably pulling an all-nighter trying to fix what I'd broken. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. But then I remembered Tyler's voice saying, "We don't need him. We need his system," and my sympathy evaporated. But Sentinel wasn't done, because I'd given her one more gift, one I called exposure, one that would make sure when the dust settled, everyone would know exactly what Tyler tried to do and whose fingerprints were on the smoking gun. They didn't notice the first wave. That was the beauty of it. I didn't crash anything. I embarrassed it. The Munich audit reports recompiled with every timestamp shifted by 13 hours. Just enough to invalidate their Q4 filings. Not enough to raise immediate alarms, but enough to make compliance scream when they noticed. The Singapore endpoint was still active, but now it was pinging from inside their own firewall. Sentinel routed it through a ghost VM using Sophia's forged credentials, then logged the access attempt under executive review preparation. And the best part, every manager in the thread got a copy, courtesy of a phantom Slack user named RB Ghost. No avatar, no history. Just one message. "Funny how you tried to copy the engine but forgot who built the transmission. Tyler deleted it in 3 seconds. But Carlos screenshotted it in 2 and forwarded it to half the engineering team." By midnight, the war room had moved to conference room B. The CTO flew in from San Francisco. Sophia was nowhere to be found. My old team, Carlos, Maria, Jenny, were being questioned like they'd staged a digital coup. Legal sent out reminders about confidentiality agreements. HR drafted a containment memo with all the urgency of a cardiac surgeon using duct tape. Meanwhile, I was logged into a private monitoring feed I'd set up months ago as a joke. Used to call it Overwatch. Just a black and white dashboard stream with occasional status updates from Sentinel, color-coded based on threat level. Tonight, she was deep red. At 1:03 a.m., she dropped the nuclear option. Internal Git repository corrupted. Sophia's middleware clone detected as compromised. 1,847 lines of code replaced with auto-generated gibberish. Header comment added, "You shouldn't have tried to erase the architect." It pushed live to production. Sophia's masterpiece went viral in all the wrong ways. Client dashboards showing revenue as infinite tacos. Confidence scores reading system. Null reference exception. All of it signed with her credentials, broadcast through her commit history, traceable and time-stamped and absolutely irrevocable. Tyler called me at 1:27 a.m. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. His voice was wet with desperation. "Rick, I don't know what you think you're doing." I cut him off. "Don't worry, Tyler. This isn't revenge." Pause, then what the hell is it? "It's education. For all of us." I sent him the video link of their planning meeting. Waited. All I heard was a sharp inhale, a chair scraping, then a single whispered word, "I won't repeat." Then I hung up, because Sentinel had already cued the final move, and they hadn't even seen the real consequences yet. By dawn, the headlines started sprouting like weeds in a corporate parking lot. Startup COO accused of cloning proprietary systems without consent. Whistleblower reveals secret surveillance in tech firm. AI sabotage or executive coup? The Rick Banner protocol. I didn't leak the story. Sentinel did, through a dead man's switch I'd built on a dare 3 years ago. One that would only trigger if I was removed from all internal systems, and if a cloned authentication signature tried to execute privileged operations. She sent it to 3 reporters. One was an ex-employee from legal who'd hated Tyler's guts since the Christmas party incident. Another had been sniffing around IPO rumors for months. The third was my sister-in-law, who works in PR for a hedge fund and loves corporate scandals more than oxygen. The video of Tyler's planning meeting was redacted, sure, but the voices were clear enough, especially Sophia's nervous laugh when she said, "Once he's out, we'll reframe it as strategic modernization." But then my phone rang. My ex-wife, Sarah. "Rick, what the hell is happening?" Mia called me crying. "Kids at school are sharing articles about your company on TikTok. She's embarrassed to tell people her dad works there." Works. Past tense now, but Sarah didn't know that yet. "It's complicated. I can't really... Are we going to have to move again? Because I swear, if you drag Mia through another one of your corporate wars, like at Dataflow, the last company that had imploded around me. Different reasons, same result. Innocent people hurt while I fought for principles. Sarah, I'll call you back." Rick, I hung up. Then immediately texted Mia, "You okay, kiddo?" Her response came back fast. "Dad, are you in trouble? Kids are saying you hacked your own company." Sarah Kim's dad works for a cybersecurity firm and he's sharing the articles with everyone. Great. Now I was the cautionary tale at Mia's high school. The Munich audit didn't just freeze their contract, it triggered an SEC investigation into our IPO filings. Suddenly, employees who had nothing to do with Tyler's scheme were getting interviewed by federal investigators. Carlos texted me at 7 a.m., "FBI agent just called. They want to know about unusual system modifications." What do I tell them? I'd wanted to expose corruption, not destroy innocent people's careers. But when you pull one thread in a company preparing for IPO, sometimes the whole fabric unravels. Except now Sophia was missing. Completely ghosted. Phone off, GitHub account deleted. Tyler claimed she was on personal leave. Her LinkedIn said profile not found. And Sentinel? She was no longer red. She was violet. The final state. The one nobody knew about. Not even the development team I'd trained for 5 years. Violet meant retribution protocol armed. Non-lethal but public. And absolutely humiliating. At 9:12 a.m., every client dashboard refreshed with a banner. System optimization update in progress. Original architect available for consultation. My personal portfolio website, which I hadn't updated since 2019, suddenly went from 0 traffic to 34,000 hits in under 2 hours. Recruiters flooded my inbox, speaking invitations. A podcast request titled "The Man Who Engineered His Own Resurrection." But buried in the flood was an email that made my stomach drop. From Janet Walsh at Pinnacle Financial, "Mr. Banner, we were considering your firm for our security audit, but recent events have raised concerns about your methods. We'll be pursuing other options." 2 more cancellations followed by lunch. Apparently, hiring the guy who'd triggered a federal investigation was seen as a risk. Meanwhile, I sipped coffee in a t-shirt that said, "Experienced, not expired," a gift from Mia last Father's Day, and watched the SEC announcement scroll across financial news sites. Then Tyler sent me one final message, "What do you want?" I stared at it for 5 whole minutes. The honest answer was complicated. I wanted my reputation back. I wanted Mia to be proud of her dad instead of embarrassed. I wanted the investigation to focus on the real criminals, not the employees just trying to keep their jobs. I typed the truth on record. Or I release everything, including the parts that will make this investigation look like a parking ticket. 3 hours later, he scheduled a live stream with the board of directors. The invitation had exactly one name CC'd: Rick Banner, Observer. Subject line: Internal Review, System Replication Initiative and Governance Failures. The last time Tyler stood in front of a camera, he was ringing the opening bell for a $1 billion valuation. This time, he'd be explaining how a system he didn't understand tried to erase the man who built it. My phone buzzed during the pre-stream setup. Text from Mia. Dad, I told Sarah Kim's dad that my father built something so good that stealing it took down a whole company. She shut up after that. Smart kid. But I could hear the forced bravado in her text. This was affecting her more than she wanted to admit. The live stream began like every corporate post-mortem. Stiff suits, watered-down apologies, and enough buzzwords to choke a thesaurus. But this time the audience wasn't just investors. It was bloodthirsty employees, journalists, clients with frozen contracts, and federal investigators taking notes. And me, sitting barefoot on my couch, drinking beer from a mug that said "World's Okayest Engineer." Tyler looked like a funeral director who'd lost the body. His once perfect hair was collapsing under stress sweat. Beside him sat Miranda from legal, blinking like she'd swallowed a wasp. The SEC investigation had everyone lawyered up and terrified. No Sophia, still MIA. He cleared his throat, spoke in that CEO cadence that usually smells like TED Talk cologne. We've identified a critical oversight in our systems modernization initiative. I nearly choked on my beer. Systems modernization initiative. That's what he was calling intellectual theft now. We acknowledge that our internal processes failed to account for proper oversight, leading to unauthorized modifications of core proprietary platforms. You could feel the board's collective sphincter tightening in real time. The SEC representative was probably taking notes. Rick Banner's contributions were foundational to our infrastructure. His departure was mismanaged. We regret that this led to cascading systems instability. Translation: we tried to screw him, failed spectacularly, and now federal investigators are asking uncomfortable questions. Then came the part that mattered. Tyler stepped aside. The camera feed cut to a second window. My webcam light blinked on. I hadn't agreed to that. Sentinel was doing it clearly. That little violet demon was dragging me onto the stage I'd built. But I didn't flinch. I looked straight into the lens and said, calm as moonlight, "For 24 years, I gave you a fortress. You fired the architect and handed the keys to someone who'd never laid a foundation brick. Then you asked why the walls fell down." Someone gasped on the board's end. Probably the finance guy who was now calculating SEC fine exposure. I continued, "This wasn't an accident. This was attempted theft. I was erased on purpose, not because I failed, but because I couldn't be controlled. Sentinel didn't malfunction. She obeyed her prime directive, protect the system from those who would weaponize it." I looked directly at Tyler through the camera. "And you tried to weaponize me." Then I did the unthinkable. I clicked share screen and displayed the full conversation log. Every email, every Slack thread, every buried memo about replacing me with Sophia. The folder was titled Operation Replacement. Miranda gasped. The chat exploded. Tyler tried to talk. I muted him. But then I added something I hadn't planned. I also want to be clear. Many good people are caught in this mess. Employees who had nothing to do with this scheme are now facing federal interviews because of decisions made in this room. That's on me too. When you fight institutional corruption, innocent people get hurt. I regret that, but I don't regret exposing the truth. I ended with one line. You built a company on code you never understood. You tried to clone the brain and forgot it had a spine. Then I logged off. My inbox exploded in seconds. Job offers, apologies, lawyers, reporters, and 3 more consultant cancellations. But none of it mattered, because there was still one more card Sentinel hadn't played. And she was just waiting for my final command. The next morning I walked into headquarters like I owned the place. Technically I still had a badge. They'd never revoked my emergency consultant credentials, and Sentinel had quietly reactivated my clearance at 3:12 a.m., slipping me into the system like a ghost in a locked house. Security nodded as I passed, but their eyes said they'd been briefed. The FBI interviews had everyone paranoid about who was watching whom. Fear has a scent. Right now, this place reeked of it. The lobby was dead quiet except for the coffee machine wheezing out stale ambition. I took the elevator to the 16th floor. Executive level. Glass walls, fake plants, and the faint smell of shredded documents. I didn't knock. I walked into Tyler's office like I was still his boss. And maybe I was. He looked up, pale, sweaty, his eyes saying please, but his mouth staying smart enough to stay shut. I placed a flash drive on his desk. Bright red, labeled in bold white letters, backup/restore. He stared at it like it might explode. Everything you lost is on here, I said. Every client node, every data pipeline, even Munich's rebuild protocol. Fully restored, clean, stable. His voice finally worked. Why? Because chaos doesn't scale, Tyler. But consequences do. And I'm done with both. He reached for the drive. I slammed my hand down on top of his. You'll get this after 3 things happen. He nodded slowly, like a man who just realized he was drowning. 1. Public resignation. Immediate, citing executive misconduct and failed oversight. His lip twitched. For a split second, I saw past the corporate facade. He wasn't just a PowerPoint jockey trying to steal my work. He was someone who'd never built anything real, trying to prove he was more than his MBA. Still didn't excuse what he'd done, but it explained it. 2. Full reinstatement of all my unvested stock, retroactive, with the bonus you tried to steal. Sign the paperwork and announce it in today's shareholder briefing. Still nodding. Good. 3, I said, leaning closer. I want Sophia's name scrubbed. Not just from the system, but from history. No commit logs, no email threads, no desk placard. She didn't build this. I did. I don't share credit with ghosts. Tyler's shoulders collapsed. He nodded one final time. I pushed the drive across the desk. Then I walked out. No security escort, no applause. Just the slow, satisfying rhythm of my boots on marble tile. Sentinel pinged me as I reached the lobby. Mission complete. Threats neutralized. Optional command delete backup files. I paused at the revolving door, typed back negative. Let them remember. Later that evening, I watched Tyler's resignation from my favorite sports bar. He called it a personal decision to pursue new opportunities. The board thanked him for his leadership during a period of organizational transition. Sophia's name was never mentioned, but every slide in the new company roadmap ended the same way. Architecture restored. Thank you, Rick. What they didn't mention was the SEC investigation My Little War had triggered. Turned out, when you expose systematic fraud in a company preparing for IPO, federal investigators get interested. Employees who had nothing to do with Tyler's scheme were getting interviewed, hiring lawyers, watching their stock options evaporate in legal limbo. I'd wanted to expose corruption, not destroy innocent people's careers. But sometimes when you pull one thread, the whole sweater unravels. My phone buzzed. Text from Mia. Dad, saw the news. Are we going to be okay? That question hit harder than Tyler's desperate phone calls. Are we going to be okay? Like when her mom and I split. Like when my last company folded. I'd promised her stability. Now I was dragging her through another corporate war. I called her instead of texting back. Hey kiddo, yeah, we're going to be fine. But the stock options, smart kid. She'd been listening when I explained how startup equity worked. The options are tied up in legal proceedings. Could be months before we see any money from them. Maybe longer. Silence on her end. Then, do you regret it? Not the outcome, but the way you did it? You could have just found another job. I thought about that while watching Tyler's replacement announce renewed focus on sustainable growth and ethical leadership on the live stream. Sometimes you have to fight back, Mia. Not for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. But fighting back has costs. I made a lot of people's lives harder to make my point. But you also made it safer for the next person like you. Maybe. We'll see. 3 weeks later, I started banner system security from my kitchen table. Not because I had a grand plan, but because I needed work and nobody was hiring the guy who'd humiliated Tyler Brooks. Turned out my reputation was complicated. Half the industry saw me as a whistleblower who'd exposed real corruption. The other half saw me as a digital arsonist who'd burned down his own company out of spite. 3 companies had turned me down after informal conversations with former colleagues. Apparently, hiring Rick Banner was seen as a risk. What if he built back doors into their systems too? But there were others. Smaller companies, family businesses, organizations that had been burned by slick consultants and smooth-talking CTOs. They wanted someone who built things to last, not to impress. My first client was a regional bank whose new IT director had just fired their entire senior staff to modernize operations with cloud-native solutions. 2 weeks later, their loan processing system crashed during end-of-quarter reporting. Can you fix this? The bank president asked me during our video call. Probably. But first, can you tell me exactly what your IT director promised you and how much you paid him to destroy a system that was working fine? 6 months later, Banner Systems had 4 employees: me, Carlos, Maria, and Luis, all refugees from companies that had decided experience was a liability. We specialized in protecting organizations from their own technological ambitions. The stock option situation finally resolved itself 11 months after Tyler's resignation. The company had been sold to a competitor for parts after the SEC investigation revealed systematic governance failures. My shares were worth about 60 cents on the dollar after legal fees. Justice isn't free, and it's rarely quick. But Mia got her acceptance letter to UT's computer science program with a partial scholarship. The rest we'd figure out. We always did. Tyler landed on his feet, like guys like him always do. 6 months later, he was VP of digital strategy at another startup, probably telling the same story about legacy systems and digital transformation. Some people never learn. But the lawsuit made the trade journals. A few companies started adding protection clauses for senior engineers in their employment contracts. The Banner Protocol, one article called it. Small victories. On Saturday mornings, I still teach Mia to code. She's working on something she calls Legacy Guardian, a system that monitors for unauthorized access to senior employees' work and automatically documents any attempts at intellectual property theft. It's like Sentinel, she said, but with better lawyers. Like father, like daughter. These days, I sleep reasonably well. The company I helped build is gone, but the systems I created outlived the people who tried to steal them. My consulting firm is small but stable. Mia's got a bright future ahead of her. And somewhere out there, another 47-year-old engineer is getting called into an unexpected meeting with people in expensive suits. I hope they remember my story. Experience doesn't go out of style, it just gets more expensive. And that's exactly how it should be.